Hello, hello, welcome back.
Hello and welcome.
Welcome back to Living Richly with Curo, episode number 37. Today we have hopefully a fascinating topic that we can all reflect on and learn from. I
hmm
am Anne McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo Private Wealth, and I'm joined as always by my awesome partner, Atricia.
Hello, I am Atricia Roberts, COO and partner here at Curo. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you as always. So, our goal here on the Living Richly with Curo podcast is always to educate, inspire, empower you. And we do that through talking about different financial topics. So, today we are going to share the top 5 regrets of older American retirees, with the idea being that for many of us, retirement and certainly our older years are many years in the future for us. And so let's
hmm
learn from other people's mistakes and hopefully not make the same. So that is
Yes,
our topic du jour.
I like it.
Yeah. But before we get into that, we always like to do an A team catch up. So I think first and foremost, I know you have come up with your word for the year,
I
Atresa.
have.
So are you prepared to share with our lovely podcasting community what your word is for the year?
Of course. So, just a little context. If you didn't listen to our last episode, which you should, the first of 25, Anne always creates a word, a theme, if you will, for each year. And I wasn't prepared with my word last week, but now I have it. And my word for 2025 is pace. And really, where that comes from is that I am, as a personality trait, a person who prefers to work in a more moderately paced sort of a speed. I like to check off lists. I like to get things done. I like to work on one thing before I jump to the next thing. And as you know, when you are super busy and you are seeing clients and you are, planning a business and running a business and trying to be your best and show up and be your best for the people around you. There's just never enough hours in the day. And I found myself last year juggling and feeling like I was failing miserably. So, my goal this year, even though I know the busy doesn't stop, the crazy doesn't stop, all of that still remains, but it's to figure out tools, tips, tricks for how to better pace myself through all of the tasks that I am required to do. So that's what I'm focusing on this year is pace. To pace myself and not get overwhelmed, not let anxiety kick in because, there's 1,000 things that always need to be done all at once, all the time. So
Yes, exactly. I love it. And you didn't
thank
fail miserably at anything. May I just note and make a little correction there, but I understand you are feeling like you weren't not working in your
Yes.
best natural style. And we know that that only can last for a certain amount of time. It's like a rubber band. We always talk
hmm
about this analogy, right? It's like a rubber band stretching. You can stretch a rubber band only so far before it snaps. So
Yes.
we don't want you to snap. So I love that your word
Yeah.
is pace because I think it's much more in line with your natural working style and how you feel like you deliver your best, which we all want to feel
Right.
like we're delivering our best. So I love that you came up with a word and I love the word and I can't
Thank
wait to
you.
for us to help hold each other accountable
Yes,
to our
accountable, right?
words.
To
Yeah.
hold and our listeners to hold us accountable since we've now shared it with the general public as well.
Exactly, exactly. Y'all can send us in a question or, make a comment and ask us how we're doing. That accountability is always appreciated,
Yes,
welcomed and
absolutely,
appreciated. Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. The only update really I have is I'm super excited about this year. You and I had a chance to, have a one-on-one yesterday, which I always
Mhm.
love, and just our conversation around, what we both have planned for this year and some of the opportunities and also some of the challenges,
Mhm.
which there always are
Oh,
some
yeah.
of those. But I just left our conversation yesterday feeling super optimistic and excited and also really committed to both of our words, which are going to be imperative, I think, for
Mhm.
both of us to really have a successful year. So I'm just excited about 2025 and
I
looking
am
forward
too.
to rocking it with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think there's some good things in store for us this year, both
Agreed.
professionally and personally.
Yes, agreed. So all right. So now to turn the conversation to maybe not such a positive topic, let's talk about some of the top financial regrets of older American retirees. And we'll just share a little bit of background with you all in terms of why we thought about talking about this topic. The Wall Street Journal recently interviewed 15 octogenarians and they wrote an article about these conversations they had with these octogenarians and some of the biggest financial regrets that they had. And so we decided to take some of the learnings from those conversations, but also a bit more research from the University of Pennsylvania. The Wharton School has done a bunch of work on interviewing older American retirees. And then Atricia and myself work with retirees every day in our firm at Curo. And so not only do we have the articles and the research studies, but we have plenty of stories that we can share about conversations that we've had and observations that we've made of current retirees. And we're happy to share some of those conversations and the regrets that we've heard from folks as well. And the goal here is not to depress anybody or make anybody feel sad about the regrets. It's to learn from other people's regrets, right? Let's learn from other people's experiences and try not to make the same mistakes. So that is the background. So, Atrisa, why don't you
Mhm.
kick us off with the number one regret that a lot of folks have in retirement?
Yes, number 1 and probably the most obvious, I would think, of course, is not saving enough. So that's the top regret of older retirees. There's a lot of life in retirement, especially now that the average life expectancy for Americans is approaching 80. So for people who retire in their 60s, and and you and I even have experience now where clients are deciding to retire even earlier or into their mid to late 50s, you're talking about 20 to 30, maybe even 35 years of potential life in retirement. And when you consider that you may have as many years in retirement as you had in working years, it's important that how much you're saving and planning for that saving should be a top priority. There was an 83-year-old interviewed who said he regretted not investing in stocks or mutual funds until his mid 50s. A good financial person is advisable and will more than earn their fee. That was a quote from the person interviewed. And he also stated, I should have engaged a financial planner sooner. So when you think about those numbers of years, sometimes it's not just enough to have cash. We know it's not just enough to have cash. We've shared the data around cash not outpacing inflation over the long term. So, planning in a well balanced portfolio for what could be 30 years in retirement, where you're now starting to draw down on the assets you saved, is really, really important. Some of those interviews said that they lacked awareness and know-how or access to resources. Their careers began 40 to 50 years ago before the advent of 401ks, right, which is a problem for a lot of older retirees. And then, even specifically, and we know this for many women, the shortfall starts from a late start or stems from a late start, and sometimes even a pause in career. So many women will step away from their career or earning years in order to stay home, to have children, to take care of families. And that also gives them a late start in saving for retirement as well. So, not saving enough for whatever those reasons may have been is the top regret for many older retirees.
Yeah, and actually to date, our most popular podcast so far has been our episode on women and investing. So be sure to check that out. That's episode number 26. But I think it's not surprising, right, that this is the number one regret for folks. And I think it's important to remember how much our retirement structure and system has changed over the past few decades, right? For our grandparents, great grandparents, most of their retirement was pensions from their companies and, some social security, and now pensions are a thing of the past. They just don't really exist for the most part anymore, and so much of the savings responsibility is now falling on our shoulders, And it is hard for the older generation. For folks like us, we've grown up with 401ks, access to 401ks our whole working lives, but that hasn't been the case for the older generation. So it's not surprising. So now we're going to flip things around a little bit. The second regret is the exact opposite of the first regret, and that is not spending enough on themselves. So here is where the balance really comes in. It's not just about saving everything and not living your life, because one of the big regrets for people is, not spending enough money on things like travel or pursuing interests or hobbies that they, would otherwise like to spend money on. There is a very interesting book that came out, I think fairly recently within the last few years, called Die with Zero. It's by Bill Perkins. And he argues in the book that the ultimate goal is not to just build wealth forever, but it's really to optimize the balance between spending, earning, and living your life. So he talks about things like spending money on meaningful experiences when you're able to enjoy them. So it's not likely that when you are 90 to 95, you are going to enjoy uh, possibly a vacation where you have to be very active, you're walking around. So if you have the opportunity to travel to a place like that where you're going to be active, you want to do that in your younger years. And so he argues that, things like oversaving can actually bring you less joy in your life, even though, you may have a lot of assets accumulated. The other thing he talks about in the book is something that he calls health is wealth. And this is something that we see with clients. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much money you have saved and invested if you have a health issue and that prevents you from enjoying life. No amount of money in the world is going to help with a health issue. So investing in your health while you are, living and earning is also very smart.
Yes, I actually had, and this was many years ago when I first started at the firm. Heard a client say, "I want my check to the funeral home to bounce." When we were talking about goals, and they were like, "No, I've worked, I've saved, I want to travel in my retirement, I want to spend. My children will be okay. I want to spend every dime that I've accumulated." So I think there's a lot of people who like the idea of that die with zero sort of a concept, because then it represents that they've lived the life, right? They've done the things they've always wanted to do. I always tell people when they say, "Oh, yeah, well, I'm saving." I'm like, "Well, what are you saving for? You've been saving for the trip. Book it, right? You've been saving for this thing. Buy it." So, I mean, people have different opinions of it. I tend to lean more toward the spending side of the die with zero mentality than maybe some other people, but it's an interesting that that's the next top regret after not saving enough.
I know, it is interesting. And the common sort of financial recommendation of only spending 4% off of your portfolio to prevent you from running out of money, this can actually lead to an extra, amount of assets at the end of your year, so or at the end of your life rather. So if your goal is to leave assets to your children or charities, that may be fine, but for those clients who want the last check to bounce to the funeral home, maybe that 4% sort of rule of thumb is not actually the right one to do. So, one of the things we talk with clients about all the time is dynamic spending in retirement, and the idea that you don't necessarily want to spend the exact amount every year. It needs to ebb and flow based on things that are going on in your life, but also things that are going on in the markets. So, it's got to be a flexible approach if you would like to try to die with as close to zero as possible.
Yeah, it's also why one of the first things we ask our clients to do when we start the planning process is to identify the goals. What's important to you, from a qualitative standpoint. What kind of life do you want to have? What kind of retirement do you want to have? What is your aim for end of life? Do you want to leave things? Do you want to spend things? It's so vitally important to know that when you start the planning process, because things change, people's opinions change, but knowing the kind of life clients want to live is also very helpful to how we, give advice and offer guidance on how they make financial decisions. Okay, so the third top regret is not working longer. Now, the reasons here are clear: more years of earning and saving, and not needing to tap into retirement assets so that those funds stay and grow, and having the ability to push back Social Security, right? So that's what a lot of people, when they decide to retire early, they maybe discount or don't realize, one, how expensive things still are in retirement. I think there's sometimes this idea for many clients, and I've talked to them when we talk about early retirement, that they're going to spend less money in
Yeah.
retirement. And we
Haha.
really, you really have to think through those things, because when you think about it, yeah, you're not maybe having the dry cleaning bill or the commuting cost or the eating the lunches out, but now you have a lot of free time. There's a lot more time to go do things, new activities, trips, and buying things for family members, and things still remain expensive for you. Homes still need repairs and updates, and cars still need maintenance. So even though you're not working, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to spend less in retirement. And not working longer for those financial reasons, I think, is a regret. But there's also the non-financial reasons of not working longer. And those things just come around sense of purpose and, staying mentally sharp and attuned, right? Working and engaging with other people kind of keeps us on our toes. And if you retire too early and you haven't formulated what that retirement looks like, what kind of things you want to do, what kind of hobbies you're into, if you're going to do charity work or volunteer work, if you haven't clearly defined that, then it's very easy, I think, for many people who do decide to retire early to regret that decision if they haven't mapped that out very clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, I think, oftentimes so much more of those non-financial aspects even than the financial aspects. So oftentimes we'll tell clients, we'll handle the financial aspects. You work on mapping out what is a day in the life going to look like now that you have all this free time and you're not working anymore. So all right, regret number 4, claiming Social Security too early. So, interestingly enough, the older the respondent was, the more likely he or she was to regret having taken Social Security early. So, for those of you who are not aware, you are able to collect Social Security as early as 62. However, this could lower your monthly benefit by about 30%. So if you wait from age 62 to age 70, you get about an 8% bump in your monthly benefit. And the way that we always talk with clients about this is we can't guarantee an 8% rate of return anywhere, right? Versus you are getting guaranteed, and this is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, a guarantee of an 8% increase to your benefit every year you wait from 62 to 70. Now, don't wait past 70. There is not an additional benefit for waiting past 70. But there was a study published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and this was published back in 2022. And they found that for 90% of Americans, they would receive a higher Social Security lifetime benefit by waiting until age 70 versus taking at 62. So we like to run the break even analysis for clients when we're helping them make this decision. And we typically find that the break even is in your early 80s. So, another way of thinking of that is if your life expectancy is past or your early 80s, then you probably should wait to take your Social Security benefit because you will have more money. Now, most people don't know when they're going to pass away, right? If you could tell us when you're going to pass away, we can calculate the exact day that you should take your benefit. But, for most people, if you're healthy and you have pretty good longevity in your family, you take good care of yourself, that kind of thing, then chances are it would probably benefit you to wait. So, for some people who were interviewed who did take early benefits, because a big percentage of people do end up taking Social Security benefits the second that they qualify. I do think the average age is closer to 63. So, maybe folks are waiting about a year, but most people are not waiting to their full retirement age or even age 70. So, for some of the folks that were interviewed, they had valid reasons, like maybe they needed extra income for a health issue or some sort of financial constraint. But a lot of people also, and I honestly think this is a huge factor, they stated more kind of psychological ownership reasons, like, "That is my benefit, that's something I've been paying into, and I want to take my money. And then I'm sure you've had this experience too, Atricia, when we're talking to clients about this. People are like, I don't know if the benefit's going to be around, right?
Right.
We read the articles about the insolvency of the Social
Mhm.
Security trust fund, and I just don't think my money's gonna be there, so I'd rather grab it while I can, kind of thing, and I think that that's a huge factor to people claiming early.
Yeah, I think this is where work with a financial planner can be very, very helpful. As you mentioned, we run that break even. We can let clients know or give them at least the guidance and the advice on the best time to take Social Security. Because a lot of people do feel that ownership and they're like, it's mine, it's due to me, I'm going to claim it now, not realizing how much they're losing in that lifetime income by taking it so early. Because 62 is very early for Social Security. So unless you just absolutely have to, right? Unless you have to because there's an income shortfall. And sometimes that is the case, right? There's an income shortfall where Social Security can make up that gap. Or, like you already mentioned, there's some sort of a health concern where life expectancy doesn't appear to be, we don't ever know, right? But it doesn't seem like there's going to be many, many years. Then, if you can wait, then typically the guidance is to wait.
Right, exactly. I think we should do a whole episode on the topic of, like, is Social Security gonna be there when,
Oh, I think that would
my
be great.
benefits are due? Yeah, because how many times do we have that conversation where, the only times I can think of where we were not successful in convincing clients to wait on their Social Security wasn't even that they needed the income, it was that they were more concerned, they didn't trust the government,
Right.
they're more concerned that the money wouldn't be there if they waited to their full retirement age or age 70. So,
Yeah, I think that would
anyway,
be
whole
a great
nother
topic. Yeah, I think
yeah,
that would be a great episode.
a whole nother episode. So, all right, and I'm gonna take the last one too because it's a pretty quick one. The last regret was what we're calling not doing contingency planning. So, a lot of people talked about, not having plan B or plan C, specifically not planning around a business going down. We see this all the time with our small business owners. They have so many of their eggs in their one business basket, maybe don't have a ton of liquidity or constantly reinvesting in their business. And their retirement plan is to sell their business and then invest that money. But what happens if you can't sell your business? Or like we've worked with clients, specifically, I can think of a few in the government contracting space where they had revenues of 15, 20 million, something happens with the contract and boom, they're down to a few $1 million in revenue. So pretty massive differences. So we think it's very important to contingency plan and to diversify. Just like we talk about diversification amongst your investments, it's also important to diversify your assets, obviously, outside of things like your company. And then the other big thing to plan for, contingency plan for anyway, is possibly going through a divorce, which we know happens. A very large percentage, unfortunately, of marriages end in divorce, and this thing called gray divorce, which is when older, folks 60, 65 are getting divorced, is extremely common right now. And so if you've planned your whole working lives thinking you are going to retire with your spouse and then you end up having a divorce, it's really important to understand, how that may change your financial position and kind of plan accordingly. So it's impossible to know what life is gonna throw our
Right.
way. We've all had lots of unexpected events occur, and so
Mhm.
having those contingency plans, I think, are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have an experience with a client where there was a divorce, not grade necessarily, but later into probably I would call it pre-retiree phase of life. And, retirement assets had to be divided, right? 401ks have to be split and IRAs have to be split. And then when everything shakes out and settles and you look at the numbers and you realize, oh, wait, as an individual person, I may not actually be on track the way that I thought that I would. So that's a big thing. And even loss of spouse, even maybe through death, especially as a woman, because the statistics say that we're going to outlive our male counterparts. So thinking of those things and considering the what ifs, right? What if this fails or doesn't plan the way we thought it would? Are we as individual people going to be okay? Or are we without this business going to be okay?
Yeah, exactly. And to your point earlier, this is where having a financial planner can be super helpful because our job is to run those what if
Mhm.
scenarios and show you what the probability of success is in your financial plan if these things should happen or, don't go according to plan. So, super important to have somebody run those scenarios with you and for you because, oftentimes we'll ask questions that clients maybe haven't thought about in
Right.
the past. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So allow us all to learn from our older, hopefully wiser
Hopefully wiser.
American retirees and let us not make the same mistakes. So share this episode, please, with someone who you know is preparing for retirement, let's say 5 to 10 years outside of retirement, because these are also things that we want to think about earlier in life, but even, closer to leading up to retirement in case there are any sort of tweaks or changes that we can make. So,
Yes.
friendly reminder also before we get into our closing thought to subscribe to our YouTube channel or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen or watch. Give us a rating, review, and send us in your questions
Yes, we wanna hear from
to
you.
we do. We love hearing from you. Send those into podcast@curoprivatewealth.com. If we answer one of your questions on an episode, we will send you an Amazon gift card as a thank you. So send those in. We do have a couple of questions that have come in that we are actually bringing in subject matter experts in
Mhm.
to help us answer those questions. So we have heard from you. We appreciate the question. The answer is coming down the pike. Don't you worry. But keep those coming. So, all right. So, time for our closing thought of the day. So, Teresa, what do you have for us for a closing thought?
Yeah, so for those of us on the East Coast or maybe more mid-Atlantic in certain areas, we got hit with a bit of a I guess it's a snowstorm. We got some
Yeah, I
pretty
would call it a
yeah.
snowstorm.
We got some pretty significant snow over the last few days, and we had the benefit, I think, or the privilege of being able to have our team work from home, keep everybody safe and warm. But it also made me think about the people who are less fortunate at times of the season like this. People who are unhoused or experiencing homelessness and just the challenges that they face. And I always think about it, right? Like we're here inside and we're warm, and my heart goes out to the people who don't necessarily have those resources for whatever reason. So one of the things again that you and I talked about goal setting is doing more giving back and more volunteerism, and that's just one of the things that struck me because DC area is a city who I think experiences a lot of people going through homelessness or unhoused, just like many urban, rapidly growing cities do, and looking for ways to maybe support organizations and people in places that help serve those who don't have the safety and warmth to go home to, when the weather is nasty. So it's not a really happy closing thought, but it's kind of been what's on my mind. So I would encourage everyone to consider, those less fortunate during times like this. And if there's even some little small thing that you can do to improve the community around you, then I would encourage you to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And as we talked about yesterday, you have inspired our family to volunteer together because we think too for family for those of us raising children it's super important to not only instill giving back and making that part of who they are as a value but also gratitude and understanding how incredibly fortunate and blessed they are and a lot of times when you give back to those who are less fortunate it can help reinforce how good we have it so I love that closing thought. So, my closing thought actually is in line with the topic of today in terms of trying to learn from other people's regrets. I would just encourage everybody to think about one of the regrets that we talked about and take one simple step today to prevent you from being in a situation where if you were interviewed when you're 80 or 85 you would answer the question the same way in terms of the regret. So even one micro step in the direction away from having these regrets can make a big difference. So pick one of the topics that we talked about and take some small action today to put yourself in a better position, whether that's saving a little bit more or planning a trip that you have been putting off or thinking about some contingency planning, whatever it may be.
Yeah, history can be our best teacher. So, I would
Absolutely.
always take the wisdom from those who've done it before us.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right, folks. Well, that wraps us for this week. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We will see you back here for another episode of Living Richly with Curo next week. And until then,
Live richly.